Merfolk has kind of risen to that level, it seems like. There's a good amount of Merfolk here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, and I guess it's one of those decks that I think people really have an affinity for. They love playing it. They probably played it for a while, but they're just trying to find the right metagame for it. Obviously, very good against combo decks. What do you think of this particular matchup?
So this matchup it generally favors the Sneak and Show deck. Chris Smith has made some alterations, and I think those actually kind of edge it a little bit closer to favoring him. I still don't think he is favored, but he has the full 4 Phantasmal Image. He actually has 3 Chalice of the Void main. Those are replacing the Aether Vials. So I'm not sure how I feel about that build kind of in the dark, but in this particular matchup, I am pretty happy with Chalice of the Void, and Aether Vial, just not what you need.
Yeah, so Todd, one thing though, Christopher doesn't have a 1-drop, so Todd's basically setting up a turn 3 Sneak and Show with Spell Pierce backup, Show and Tell rather, and he does have the Emrakul in his hand, so if Christopher taps out here, Todd's probably going to pull the trigger on his turn 3.
Yeah, for sure.
Now we see a Silver Girl Adept that's going to net him a card. He's going to reveal Lord Atlantis, and he'll draw a card. He gets a little beater in there, but again, Todd, if Todd just resolved the Show and Tell, there's really nothing that the Merfolk deck can do about an Emrakul. I mean, very few decks can, but some decks have, Liliana, some decks have a Jace. Is there really anything that the Merfolk deck can do game 1?
There really isn't. Yeah, this particular build, oh wow, I just noticed he is missing Daze, Spell Pierce, things like that. Traditionally, Merfolk decks have, of course, the 4 Force of Will, which Chris does have, and then an extra layer of counter magic. Usually it's something like 4 Days, 2 Spell Pierce, something along those lines. Chris Smith just has the 4 Force of Will. Of course, he's playing Chalice of the Void, so doesn't want to play any 1-drop counter spells. Because he doesn't have Aether Vial, he does have 4 Kosi's Trickster to go with this 4 Curse Catcher. So missed his opportunity to play one of his 8 1-drops there, and is getting punished for it here.
So yeah, Todd does have Force of Will as well now. So he has Force of Will backup along with the Spell Pierce with Lotus Petal. So it looks like we're going to see an Emrakul come into play and a True Name Nemesis from Christopher's side. Not quite as impressive. So we're going to see a concession here from Chris right away.
Kicks it right up.
So it looks like there's 4 copies of Phantasmal Images in the Merfolk main deck. How do you kind of see that playing out? Because technically it could come into play and then like copy a Grizzlebrand or an Emrakul.
It could. There's some weird interactions there. If like when Todd casts Show and Tell, and he puts his card face down, and if Chris tries to put a Phantasmal Image into play with the Show and Tell, it can't actually copy the creature that Todd put into play.
Yeah.
So you can only copy a creature that is already in play with Phantasmal Image, which basically means that you are limited to copying Grizzlebrand.
Yeah. So basically, the only way that it's really effective is if Todd just Show and Tells a Grizzlebrand into play, and then he actually just casts the Phantasmal Image.
Correct.
To actually just draw cards and try to get out of it. I mean, because that is a realistic thing that can happen. Yeah. I mean, Emrakul is going to probably close the game out every time. You're not going to get another attack step, but getting a Grizzlebrand out there, it could help Chris out. So Phantasmal Image might be relevant, but you see that card probably staying in?
Yeah, well, I think it'll stay in, sure. I mean, even when it's not copying a giant monster, it's copying a Lord of Atlantis, something like that. It's still pretty effective. Traditionally, this card is much more useful in the Aether Vial builds.
Yeah.
If you can get an Aether Vial on 2 counters, then you can flash the card in at end step after a Show and Tell, so you get to be the first one to attack with your Emrakul, so you can actually copy Emrakuls that way. You can also let the trigger resolve to sack most of your permanents, keep just Aether Vial, and then copy the Emrakul and crack back if he's using Sneak and Show instead, or Sneak Attack instead. But without Aether Vial, Phantasmal Image loses a lot of its utility actually in this matchup.
Yeah, and I kind of always felt that like one of the real appeals for Merfolk for me was the ability to play Aether Vial. I mean, being able to get 2 Lords into play at the same time, getting the Lord into play at the end of the turn. It just, Aether Vial just seems so powerful in this particular deck. Are you surprised at all that he's not playing, or is Chalice of the Void just that much better in this particular
I don't think it's better. Okay. It's different.
Okay.
It's really, you're going after a different metagame, I think. Aether Vial, of course, is at its best when it gives you the mana jump, when it kind of allows you to use your mana twice as fast.
Yep.
Where it's at its worst are in matchups that are combo oriented, or basically just people trying to play unfair, so that getting creatures into play is not really what you're trying to do anyway. You're more concerned with stopping what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's not great there, and it's particularly bad in matchups that are kind of a grind. It costs you a card to allow you to deploy your threats faster. So in a long game, it's kind of a virtual mulligan.
Yeah.
You hope to get that card back basically using the flash side of it, to somehow trying to like eke out a card or two's worth of value from having your creatures enter play at instant speed. But you don't always get that edge. And when the format shifts kind of the way it has with things like Deathblade, things like Shardless Bug Delver, Hymn to Turok decks really taking off. Hymn to Turok versus Aether Vial is a matchup that the Hymn deck wins almost every time.
So looking at the sideboards here, it looks like Todd's probably going to bring in 3 copies of Pyroclasm. He's got an Echoing Truth, he's got a Boseiju, 2 copies of Swan Song, and 2 copies of Through the Breach. All those cards I could see possibly coming in. Pyroclasm probably for sure. Through the Breach, I see that card coming in a lot regardless of the matchup, just as another way to kind of get around having to cast Show and Tell, because sometimes your opponent's going to have an answer to that.
Yeah, people generally look to it when there's something really scary that their opponent could put in with Show and Tell, whether it be if it could be another unfair giant monster deck, or they could just be trying to play Detention Spheres, Oblivion Rings, something like that.
So we're going to see Christopher lead with an island. Todd's going to lead with a Ponder. Anything in Christopher's sideboard that you think can help him out in this matchup?
He gains access to 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Pithing Needle, 2 Tormod's Crypt. The Pithing Needle, I think, comes in to turn off Sneak Attack. He gains access to 2 Back to Basics, 2 Dismember, 1 Echoing Truth, 1 Hurkyl's Recall, 1 Mindbreak Trap. I don't like any of those. And he has 1 Negate and 2 Swan Song. I think it's safe to bet that he's going to bring those 3 in.
Yeah, so Needle and 3 more permission spells seems reasonable. But I don't know if it's enough to help him, because based on the way the first match went, it kind of seemed pretty rough for him. But it looks like he's going to get a Mutavault, and then he's going to follow that up with a Chalice for 1 here.
Yeah. Those 3 cards are definitely not enough to swing the matchup in his favor, I don't think. Particularly, it's a little awkward that he is still leaning on Chalice of the Void. He now has Chalice on 1, even though we are assuming, brought in 2 Swan Songs and a Pithing Needle.
Yeah, so Todd does have the Show and Tell, and it looks like he has the Emrakul as well. He also has the Sneak Attack, so he has plenty of options here for what he wants to do, and he's not under any pressure whatsoever from Chris.
Yep. He can just jam here. He can take his time. It's really up to him. Since Chalice on 1 has come down, he actually doesn't gain as much as he normally would by waiting. I think the traditional mode of play with Sneak and Show is to kind of set your draw up when you can afford to, but it's not like he gets to wait and make his Brainstorm better, because his Brainstorm doesn't resolve anyway.
Yeah, so, yeah, and his hand's not that great beyond just the Show and Tells. He doesn't have any Force of Wills or anything. But yeah, he could potentially just Show and Tell the Sneak Attack into play if he wants to, but he has the Emrakul, and he could concern himself with maybe like, and Christopher's tapped out, so do you kind of just see Todd going for it right here? Just turn to rage, just jam a Show and Tell?
Since he drew that backup copy of Show and Tell, I almost certainly would jam here.
Yeah.
Before it got a little weirder, but actually because he had Show and Sneak anyway,
yeah.
So he had the redundant combo piece no matter what. Now he just has 3 redundant combo pieces.
So it looks like Christopher, I'm not sure if he has a Force of Will or not. Okay, so it looks like Show and Tell is going to resolve. He's thinking about what card he wants to put into play.
Yeah, definitely representing the Force here. That'd be the dirty slow roll, just like set a card aside.
It looks like he has a Sig River Cutthroat and a Phantasma Image that we discussed.
Oh, I say, okay, that is what's going on. He is not considering what card to pitch to Force.
Yeah.
He's considering what to put in with Show and Tell.
So this is going to be interesting here, because he's going to put the Sig into play, and now he's going to play the Phantasma Image, targeting the Emrakul. And does he have 6 permanents to sack to the Annihilator trigger? Because then he can swing back.
Yeah.
And let's say 1, 2, 3, 4. I think he does have 6 permanents.
That's exactly 6. The Phantasmal Image would make 7.
And plus, True Name Nemesis can attack here. He can draw a card from the Sig River Cutthroat ability. So, wow, Christopher's actually in pretty good shape here.
Yeah. Yeah, Todd would have been better served by Show and Telling the Sneak Attack into play, it seems like.
Yeah. Of course, he maybe didn't know about the Phantasmal Image. Now he does, so maybe he'll play the next game differently. I mean, this game's not necessarily over, but given what we know Chris could do this turn, it seems like... So this is a Hurkyl's Recall.
That is a Hurkyl's Recall that will return I'm not sure what just happened there.
Oh, so maybe he didn't have Phantasma Image, or?
Oh, I think maybe you were seeing Hercules Recall and reading and
okay.
thinking that was Phantasma
Okay,
Image.
so yeah, I thought he had the
Okay.
Phantasma Image. So, so Christopher Smith falls pretty quickly to Todd Anderson there, 2-0.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty easy sneak, both games, turn 3, sneak and show and tell, get an Emrakul into play. That's basically Legacy. Pretty easy. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't everyone play this deck?
Yeah,
It's so amazing.
No kidding, right? Yeah, the Sneak and Show definitely does make Magic look easy when it's winning.
Yeah.
Now, when it's not winning, it does absolutely nothing. So it looks really bad when it looks bad, and it looks really good when it looks good.
So Todd Anderson moves on to 7-0. Pretty impressive here. He struggled a little bit yesterday in the standard portion, but today he's 7-0 and in good shape to make top 8. As long as he can get 2 draws or even 1 draw, should be in good place to make top 8 here.
Yeah.
And get some much needed player points.
As we always kind of say at this stage, 7-0 in a 9-round tournament. We often say that's locked up top 8. It hasn't exactly, but it's